Welcome to the Referrals Podcast, the show designed to help everyone from the solopreneur to the Fortune 500 company win the referral game. If you want to build a company with an army of ambassadors and raving fans who speak highly of you and refer you willingly, you are in the right place. Let's meet your hosts, Chris Angel and Michael Maher.
Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Referrals Podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with your host, Michael Maher, and our guest, John Israel. Michael, hello, sir.
What's up? Yeah.
I want you to always say Referral Nation
It's
or something.
like, yeah, your sound's good. We forgot to test it with the yell, with the shout and the scream, right? So I have to tell you, I got an email. I don't have it actually right in front of me, but I got an email from a gal who said that she's from Chicago, and she goes, Michael, I've never seen you like not in a suit. And I saw the episode where you were like dressed for baseball practice or football practice or basketball practice.
Oh,
Me?
she said this about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, I like the casual you. It made it more real. And I was like, you know what? All right. So I can embrace this occasionally. And then today I decided to, instead of doing my hair parted on the side, I just like brushed it straight back. So,
Yeah, I can tell. It's a high and tight.
like that makes me look taller. I think I gained like a half inch right there. So
You do look taller. Yes.
I feel taller,
Yeah.
I feel taller. I don't know why that is.
Camera angles are amazing for those kinds of things. And haircuts.
It is.
Maybe next time you could wear a bathrobe or something. That would be super casual.
That's probably a little beyond where I can go. And I actually do have practice 30 minutes after our last session. So
It's good.
it's just like, hey, I'll dress for it and go for it. And then next week I'll wear a tie or something like
Yeah,
that. So,
exactly.
all good.
Well, listen, let's transition from casualness to Note-vemberness. We are in the middle of Note-vember, and we are hot on the track or the trail or some metaphor for writing a ton of notes. And I think what's exciting today is our guest is John Israel, and he started a thing called the Mr. Thank You Project, which is a global movement to inspire 74 million thank you cards written all over the world. That's incredible. So super excited to hear about that. John's also an author, speaker, and business owner. He speaks at organizational and business conferences all over the world, teaching people how they can utilize gratitude through written word to enhance well-being, build community, and grow the bottom line. So I'm excited, John, to talk to you. You've been featured on ABC News, Fox News, Good Morning America, Pop Sugar, Martha Stewart, of all things, for your work on gratitude. And I think what's so great about the overlap of what you do and what Michael does is there's this generosity generation. There's this gratitude thing that keeps coming through, and we get to use something like notes as the mechanism to spread that gratitude in the world. So, John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Michael, how did you meet John?
So I'm super stoked about this episode, right? So we talk all the time about building your business based on three things: love, generosity, and appreciation. And we talk about generosity is love in action, right? It's proactive. It's you taking action, kind of surprising others. And then you have appreciation, and appreciation is love in reaction, right? Something happens to you, you love it and you appreciate it, though sometimes that's harder to do than others. But what I love about what John has done is John has taken the reaction and made it really, really active, right? He's taking action on the reaction, really positive action on, appreciation is love in reaction. And his action is massive action, right? And I just love that. I mean, we're in the middle of November here, wrapping it up here in a little bit. And listen, we probably have over 15,000 handwritten notes that have been written by people taking the 30-day challenge in November. And then you hear John, where his goal is 74 million handwritten notes, right? And he wrote 5 a day in some cases, right? And I'll tell you what, I just love that it was so focused, and so he had so much control over this project, right? There were not outside entities who could affect him achieving his goal. It was entirely up to him. And so I just love that. So
yeah,
John, I'm stoked about this, and you're going to deliver a ton of value, and I can't wait to find out what happened before, what made you do it. and then, what happened during, and then let's talk about, like, I'm really excited about what happened since, because I kind of know some of your before, I know a lot of your during, but it's like, wow, what's happened since. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So take us into, like, what was the origin story of this Mr. Thank You project? How did you create this?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that it started that they all kind of melded together. But have you ever had that experience where you look at your life and you look at something from your past and it kind of like alludes to where you might be one day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's kind of where this started for me. And one of it was back in my days as a Cutco sales rep. So some of you guys know Cutco.
Shout out.
There you go. So I started working for the
cajillion listeners, and what is the number just below cajillion, right? That's our Cutco reps that listen to this show. So it's like cajillion minus a couple of kabillion, right? So
right.
That's awesome. That's a good shout out.
So
our rankings just went up.
And then, so what happened is that back when I was 19, I was a brand new sales rep, and I was very new into the sales process, learning how to build connections and meet customers. And I sat down with this wonderful customer. Her name was Cindy. And I did my Cutco presentation. She bought some knives. It was a great experience. What I really enjoyed, though, Michael, was just the rapport. Like, really, I was young, and I was just getting to learn how to connect with people twice my age in a different demographic as me, and we had a great time. Now, sadly, within about 24 hours, that customer called me to cancel their order. And it really was kind of an odd thing, because I'd never had a canceled sale. I mean, most people here are in real estate, so we all have had that canceled escrow or something like that falls through. And I remember being really kind of thrown off by it, and I didn't know, was it something I did? Was it something I said? Like, what really happened there? And to this day, I still can't tell you what possessed me to do this, but I had this desire to write her a thank you card, thanking her for the time she spent with me. And so I grabbed a piece of stationery from my mom's desk, and I just wrote something really simple, like, hey, Cindy, I really enjoyed meeting you. Thank you for taking the time to let me, present my product to you. And, I know right now isn't the time for you to place an order, but I just want to let you know how much I valued getting to know you, getting to meet you. And whether or not you ever buy Cutco, I just want to let you know I think you're an awesome person.
So, John, you wrote this after she canceled the order.
Yeah, this is after she actually canceled her order.
You weren't even looking to get the sale. You were just like, I am compelled to express my appreciation. I don't know why, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if nothing comes of it, that's okay. And you kind of took it from there, right?
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, this is about 15 years ago. This is way before I even started this Mr. Thank You project. But this is kind of one of those origin parts of where did this desire come from? Yeah. And so anyways, I sent the letter, and interestingly, I immediately started to feel better. I started to feel like I wasn't so stuck on this anymore. I was like, I got to say what I meant to say, which is, I don't care if you buy anything. I'm grateful to have met you. So literally 2 years go by, and I'm at college at Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington, and I'm sitting in my rental apartment, and I remember out of nowhere I get this phone call, and it's this woman on the other line, and she says, "Is this Cutco John?" Because that's how everyone knew me back then. She said, "Is this Cutco John?" And I said, "Yeah, this is him. How can I help you?"
Worst nicknames, by the way. So Cutco John, not bad at all. It's all good.
And she says, hey, you may not remember me, but my name is Cindy, and I tried to buy some Cutco from you a few years ago, but I had to cancel. And I instantly remembered who she was, and I was like, yeah, of course, Cindy, like, how are you? And she says, well, I'm finally ready to buy some Cutco. Are you ready to take my order? I was like, wow. Of course, let's do it. So then she proceeds to list off the catalog of Cutco, like every knife. She's just like, I want this and 2 of those, and I got to get some gifts for Christmas. And she lists all these things out, and the order was probably 3 or 4 times what she originally was going to order back when I saw her 2 years prior. And at the end of this, I was kind of blown away. I'm like, where did this come from? Wow. And she said, John, you might be wondering why I'm calling you. I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's 2 years later. She says, well, what I couldn't tell you back then when I had to cancel my order was that I had just found out I was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I was going to have to leave my job. And my boys who had moved out of the house were going to have to move back in to basically help support me as I went through chemo and did everything. And I didn't want to cancel, but when I got your note, I saw that you viewed me as more than just a customer, but as a human being. And I told myself, when I get healthy, I'm going to call this kid and I'm going to buy every damn knife that he's selling. And that's what she did. So
wow. That was a powerful story. Wow.
Yeah, that was 15 years ago. And again, I was not habitually writing thank you cards. I don't know why still to tell you how it came out, but I just saw this instant value in appreciating people for who they are, not just as a dollar sign, like not just as a customer. So throughout my career, I decided to make it more of a habit. And ultimately what happened is in 2016, I made a commitment to write 5 thank you cards every single day for 365 consecutive days to really challenge myself to see, how much can I elevate my own level of gratitude, and how might that impact myself, my community, my business? And that's really what kind of kicked the whole thing off.
Wow. Wow. So powerful.
That's awesome. And so you had seen the benefit of it. And then, so why 5 a day for 365 days? Why not 1 a day for 30 days, right? What was just like, let's go big, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of notes.
It is. And so there's a little bit, deeper to that. You didn't just come out of nowhere like, I'm going to start tomorrow and write 5.
This podcast, baby, so that we can ask the questions about the deeper stuff. So.
Yeah. So what happened was I was at a stage, I had advanced with Cutco, and I was, a closing gift consultant, and I was in our national team. So I traveled to trade shows and we would sell Cutco all over the place. And Michael, that's where you and I originally met. Yep. And I was at this stage of, I was doing well, but I was also not really feeling fulfilled. And some of us have felt that in our business. And I decided, like many of us do when we're feeling uninspired, which is to get inspired. So I went on YouTube and I looked up inspirational videos, and I saw this really great message by Simon Sinek called Start with Why. Right. And really the message that Simon has, if you haven't seen the video, is that people don't care what you do. They care why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And in business, they don't care what you're selling. They care why you're selling it. So what's your why? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I looked at, well, what is my purpose? What is it that I do? And ultimately what I got clear about is I am a gratitude salesman. I help people say thank you for a living. So if that's the case, but you went around and asked 100 people who know John Israel, what do you know about him? Mm-hmm. Like, they might say some nice things, but I don't think the word grateful or appreciative or even happy would be words they'd use to describe me. So I thought that's not right. So that kind of motivated me to find a way, okay, how can I find a way to really embody gratitude and to make it a habit? I'm really big on rituals and habits, doing the miracle morning, that's part of my daily routine. And because what I know is from that, there's a great book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And he talks about keystone habits, which are habits that have a multiplying positive impact in your life, which isn't just why exercise is helpful, but because exercise makes you drink more water, which also makes you decide to eat better, which you're now tired, so you have to go to bed earlier, so you sleep more. So there's like all these positive benefits from one habit. So I thought of what's a habit I can implement that's going to help me elevate my level of gratitude. And I just came back to that one experience back when I was a 19-year-old college kid selling knives. Hey, that experience really, lit me up. And obviously it really impacted somebody else. So I decided that I'm going to write thank you cards. And then, your question was very appropriate of why did you decide on 5? And for me, 1, I decided I could do that. Like, I like things that are going to really challenge me. Yeah. So I was like, 1, I could do that. I don't know if that'd be very inspiring though to other people, because I like to post and share a lot on social media. And I was like, well, what if I did 10? I was like, I don't even think they'd be very good if I wrote 10 every day. I mean, that's a tall order.
Might be a full-time job too.
Seriously, no, because it took me an average to do 5 a day. It took me average of an hour and a half every single day for 365 days, which by the way, I did the math. It totaled out a couple hundred hours, and it was equivalent to 21 complete straight 24-hour days writing thank you cards for that year. Which was pretty nuts. But so it came down to, okay, 10 was too much, 5, kind of like the Goldilocks thing. Like, it felt just right. Like, it feels like a good number. It would challenge me. It would also inspire me. And I think it might inspire some other people as well, which is ultimately kind of what got us together today. I'm sorry, what?
Did you start on January 1st?
No, and that's an interesting point. I started on October 8th of 2016. Wow. And I think that was an important part, because I didn't want it to be like oh, well, January 1st, everything's different, because that's how everyone does it. I would I'm going to just commit right now.
I love that.
For a year, right in the middle of October.
That's the lesson, right? People are going to be listening to this in November, right? So it's November. It's November. And people will like put off whatever they were going to set a goal for December and say, well, I'll just start January 1st. Right. And then the gym memberships go through the roof and every other membership goes through the roof. And it's one of those where it's like, I just love that you know what? I didn't wait to start. I just started, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Right. And so it's one of those where it's like October 8th, let's just go, and man, that was really cool timing. Cause 16, I think that would have been our second year doing November. So that's interesting that it would have been like momentum right into November and December and so on and so forth. So I love it. Was there a significance of the October 8th date?
Nope.
Yeah.
It was like, I was at so, I'm big on coaching, and I've had different sales coaches throughout my career. So I was part of a group called Epic Impact, and they were, just a top 1% sales organization, pretty general, not specific to one industry. And so I was there, and I was at one of their seminars, and I was just like really just engaged. And the big topic was purpose and really aligning everything you do with what you care most about in your life. And so I was just really sitting there and really just wrestling with like, I need to be more than just a salesman, right? I need to be someone who's up to bigger things with my life. And that kind of like catalyzed the whole idea. So I'm definitely a big proponent of like coaching and mentorship if it's, the right leadership for what you're up to.
So you were at an event when this happened.
Correct. Well, that's where the idea happened. And I think this is a valuable, because what I did was about thank you cards, because that was my value.
Right.
I embodied my value at the highest level for as long as for an entire year. That's not everyone's highest value. They may have something else that they really care about. Mm-hmm. So I say that because what's important is that, it's an intense commitment. I don't even recommend people do 5 a day. It's really hard. You could do 1 a day and get tons of high value. Yeah. But what happened was I had this idea and I shared it with my coach and I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And he said, and this is actually great because then I'll share with you the rules that came along with the project, which were actually pretty important. So my coach was like, hey, that's great. What I want you to do is between now and next week's call, I want you to make a list of as many reasons as possible. I'm talking like 70, 80, 100 reasons of why you want to do this, why this is important to you, how this is going to impact your business, how this is going to impact your family. And then I want you to tell me about it next week. I was like, all right. So that's what I did. Yeah. So it wasn't just like hey, let's do it. And then and I think that's a big reason why people start a commitment and then they fail or they quit, because they didn't really dig deep enough to really anchor themselves that they're committed to it.
That's right.
And so my coach helped me with that. And then I talked to him the next week and he's like, sounds great, man. So he's like, so what are the rules? How do we make sure you honor your commitment? And what happens if you don't? So we put some rules in place. So the rules went like this. I would handwrite, had to be handwritten. They couldn't be an email, a text, which are, by the way, they're valuable. It had to be handwritten. So that was 1. 2 was it had to be 5 every day and every day reset at 0, which means as long as I had them done, they didn't have to be done by midnight, but basically before I went to bed. Yeah. So every morning reset at 0.
Yeah.
I could also write a max.
You couldn't do 25 on Friday.
Exactly. And the reason for that is because I know myself better than anyone. And I know if I give myself a way out, I'll be writing 35 cards on Sunday and my wife will be hating me. Okay. So I said 5 a day every day, has to reset at 0. And then and I could write a max of 3 cards per person. Okay. That means I can't write 100 to my wife, because that's what's going to happen if it's late and I'm like, oh, I got to write someone. Oh, I'll write it to my wife. But because then it would start to lose value.
That's right.
It wouldn't be as significant. It wouldn't be as impactful. So 3 max per person. I could write, and I did write more than 3 for several people. They just didn't count towards the challenge. So I actually did more than 5 a day on some days, but it was a minimum of 3, max of 3 per person.
Good rule.
The final rule, this is the one that people are always a little surprised by. For any and every day that I miss, I committed to donating $1,000 to charity.
Ooh.
Wow. You're not going to miss a day.
And that came about because my coach said, well, what happens if you miss a day? And I was all proud. And I was like, I'm going to donate $100 to charity. And he said, at a 0.
Too easy.
I was like, at a 0. Why would I donate? Why would you want me to donate $1,000? He's like, I don't want you to do anything. He's like, what I'm going to ask you though is, throughout the year, how likely are you to probably donate $100 or a couple $100 to charity? I was like, well, definitely have some charities I support. He's like, well, then you're basically giving yourself an out. You're giving yourself a way to not honor your commitment. So if you set it at $1,000 per day that you miss, how many are you going to miss?
0.
0. And so that's where that commitment came. So there was a lot on the line every
single day.
Nope.
Yeah.
Wow.
So by the way,
That's
here's
awesome.
how crazy it was. Here's how crazy it was. There was one night, because it gets pretty conditioned when you have a habit, right?
That's
There
right.
was one time I came home, a long day meeting clients. I come home and I'm just super tired. I'm like, I'm just gonna lie on the couch, watch some Netflix, and then I'll get up. And I haven't written any cards. I'm like, I'm gonna write my cards in a little bit. So I lay down. It's about 8 p.m. and I just pass out. I'm just like out cold, REM sleep, like I'm in a dream. In my dream, Michael, my wife comes over to me and shakes me and wakes me up and says, John, wake up. You have to finish your cards. And I wake up.
You're dreaming about handwritten notes.
I wake up and it is 11:59 on my iPhone.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, no way. So anyways, there were so many little things that I was like, I have to do this. And from there, obviously, I didn't ever miss a day. So
I love it. And so we talk about setting goals on this show every once in a while. And you know, you've heard the acronym SMART goals, right? Many people have, where it's, you know, the nice thing about your goal is it is specific. And one of the kiss of death for any goal is lack of specificity, right?
Right.
And if I would wish upon anybody when it comes to their goals or desires or dreams, is be specific, right? Be specific with the more specific you are, the more likely it's going to be attracted to your life, right? And then measurable, 5 a day. Attainable, definitely pushing it. R is relevant, right? Is this relevant to a guy who sells promotional items and thank you gifts? Fairly relevant, right? And then T is time bound. And of course, 365 days is very time bound. But I'm a believer in making your goals, you know, smarter goals. And you really have honed in on the E and the R of smarter goals. And the E is exciting, right? Make sure your goal is exciting, right? I mean, you were enthused about this. This really triggered into your passion, right? Into your purpose as well. And then the R is for rewarding, right? Reward. What's the reward for doing this? And when you talk about reward, we can also talk about punishment, right? So reward is the punishment was that you had to write $1,000, right? What did you feel like your reward would be when you started, right? Did you set I mean, I understand the penalty, right? $1,000 if you don't write them. What were you thinking that the reward would be? And listen, John, you can say, you know what I really hoped is it would end up a book and I would end up on Fox News and ABC News and I would become really famous as the Mr. Thank You guy, right? If that's it, then God bless you for your ability to see the future. But you know, and you said you were on social media a lot. And listen, if part of the motivation is that you're going to impress and inspire others, then guess what? Own it, right? Just own it. And I'm not saying that's yours, but I know there's people that are watching and listening to this that, you know, it's like, well, I want to say that it's because I want to, you know, be more grateful and, you know, it's like cut the BS. Like just, you know what? I hope it turns into a movie someday.
Working by referral is not some fairy tale world. It's real. I've seen it. And you can too. Invest in yourself by learning how to run your business by referral at Michael's upcoming live event. It will be a day filled with hands-on, how-to, low to no-cost strategies that you can implement in your business right away. Learn how to run a business by referral that not only feeds your family, but feeds your soul. Go to www.gengenevents.com today. That's www.gengenevents.com.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, that's an excellent question. And there's another, you know, this is where I talked about there's more than one thing that influenced this decision. And it came back to, you know, back in my, when I was about 21, 22 years old, I had a, you know, a great career with Cutco. I was one of the best reps in the country. And I had decided I was done with college. So I wanted to kind of, I wanted to leave the company. I was ready to quit and move on and find something else to do. So I decided to start taking some personal development seminars called Landmark Education, which is a big, it's some people I knew who went through that. And so I went through it hoping that I would get inspiration of how to quit my job. And what I came out with was a deeper sense of awareness of how, of really what matters in my life. And what that came down to was I had this experience of, you know, I'd done some of the programs and I remember specifically being at the beach in Santa Barbara, California, where I lived at the time. And I dropped my then girlfriend, now wife, off at the airport. And it was at 5 a.m, which normally when you have to drive someone at the airport in the morning, you're like dead tired. But I was so energetic and I was so enlivened. I was like, I got to capture this. So I went to the beach and I grabbed my journal out and I started just journaling everything that was on my mind, and everything that came out, Michael, was just this love and appreciation for people in my life.
Wow.
And so I just felt so compelled. What was that?
What do you think triggered that? Was it Landmark?
I think
was it the beach, or was it the early airport ride, or was it lack of sleep, or was it drug induced, or was it, which, by the way, we can talk about drug induced, just so you know. So, but it's like, what do you think just triggered that? Did you start crying when you were making the list?
Oh, yeah. Here, check this out. So I was, I think a lot of it was really kind of catalyzed by when I was in the Landmark program, because what they really talk about is kind of how you became to who you are. And to look at who you've become, it's hard to not look at who you've been associated with your entire life, which is family, coaches, friends, mentors, people, significant others that you love, significant others that broke your heart, and like all these people. So here was the interesting thing is I used to look at all of my challenges as painful experiences. Like, this is what's wrong with me, and that's why, because that happened to me as a child, or that happened to me as a 16-year-old or whatever. And so in Landmark, what I was able to see was really how beautiful and great my life was, and how that wouldn't be possible without everything that ever happened to me. And so I suddenly had this new perspective on everything in my life. And so I started to have these, and also this awareness of like, wow, some people really had my back when I wasn't even paying attention to it. Like coaches that really mentored me when I was in high school, like my parents, getting me drug tested when I was, 14, 15, 16 for sports. But obviously they wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything silly when I was in high school.
Oh my God, I got to write that down.
Right. But all these things.
Sports.
All these, yeah, exactly. Right. But all these things and people that were like really critical that kind of guided me in my life. And I thought like, wow, they were there the whole time. I am here because of them. And I just had this compelling desire. I have to thank them. I have to appreciate them. And again, this is still about 10 years before the Mr. Thank You Project. And so I went home, I didn't write any letters, but I grabbed my computer and I looked up, I'm talking high school English teacher, I'm talking like all my old sports coaches. I just started emailing everybody, just thanking them profusely for what they had done. I told them what I was up to, my success with Cutco, where I was at in life, graduating college. And I just thanked them profusely. And Michael, I got to tell you, like literally at the end of that day, I was on such a high of just love and gratitude. And I remember I told myself, I have never felt this good in my life. And if I could feel like this every day, I could die happy. It wouldn't even matter what my job is. If I could feel like this every day, wow, that's what matters. And so that was again, 10 years prior to the project. So it was like this seed that was just planted in my brain that was like, find a way, find a way, find a way. So when it came to, what was my benefit, what did I get out of it? Right. The reward, it would be living a life every day with a grateful heart. Holy crap. Yeah. If that could be my life, game over. I could live till 100 and I would be happy every single day.
Just drop the mic. You just need to knock the Yeti right off your table. Yeah. I mean, it's like you dropped like a dozen gems in that last couple of minutes. It's number one, if you're listening to this, take action on what John just said, right? Go and email some old teachers, old coaches. And I will tell you, being an old teacher and an old coach who's received those messages occasionally through the years, it makes that person's day when they get that note, right? When it doesn't even have to be a note. It could just, the first thing he took action 10 years ago was took action on just appreciating others, right? So take, you're like, well, I don't know if I want to commit to 5 notes for 300. Okay. Commit to this. Write one email today to an old coach or old teacher who was there when you needed it, right? The second thing that, John, you hit on the head is something I have to get out because it's come out in pieces, but it's what you're going to discover when you think about these people who you really should be appreciating is the more you appreciate people like that, the more people like that will come into your life, right? What you appreciate appreciates, right? If you want something more in your life, appreciate what you have of that, right? So if you want more great relationships in your life, appreciate the great relationships you have, right? If you want more money in your life, appreciate the money you have, right? If you want more, whatever it is, more referrals, then appreciate in a big, big way the referrals you're already getting, even if it's onesies, twosies a month, right? So it's what you appreciate appreciates. And that's the thing I think that really came out, John, and what you're saying is that you were like, well, I just did this huge appreciation project way back when, where it's like in one day, you expressed appreciation to 15, 20, 30 other people, and you felt great, right? So this combination of feeling great and getting into touch with the appreciation, let's talk about during the project. You know, what did you notice? First of all, did you have these more great relationships, did you just appreciate the same people over and over again? Or did you discover that you had new and more people and even higher quality people and more successful people to appreciate because you were doing the project?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, because obviously I can only write a max of 3 per person to count towards the project. So right. Part of it, and I think this is important to know when you take on a commitment or a big challenge that might scare you, is to bring a level of trust, the more open you are to being creative. Which means that I didn't know every day who I was going to thank. Now, I did begin, by the way, by making a list. My coach had me do this. He said, make a list of everyone that you want to write a card to. So it's like a list of like 350 people. Yeah. Well, 5 times 365 is 1,825 thank you cards. So that's, there's still quite of a gap there. So I allowed myself to literally, some of it was like a little meditative contemplation of just like, who can I appreciate today? And also this awareness, because now I'm going into the day, man, I got to find 5 people to appreciate. So now my lens is changed of my life of, I've got to find people doing something good.
That's right.
Well, how is that going to benefit you and other people in your life if that's how you live every single day? Yeah. So I'll give you examples of kind of who I gave them out to. I gave them out to, my first one ever was to a barista at Starbucks. That's actually in the book. You can see a photocopy of it. It's pretty funny. And then there's I wrote them to flight attendants, flight pilots. Every time I sent in, I wrote them to, every time I sent in a bill, if I had to pay a bill, I would send it with a thank you card, altering the experience of the emotion that I would normally feel paying the government. But I would literally write it and I would just say like, hey, we got to build roads somehow. Like, hope you guys use this wisely. And just doing something simple like that changed the experience from something negative to something positive. And I wrote them to every company owner of companies I value. So Apple, Whole Foods, Home Depot. The funny thing, a lot of them actually got back to me. Whole Foods sent me a gift card as a thank you for the card I wrote. I got books back from famous authors that I really appreciated on. I got, I sent them to members of government. I sent them out to past presidents of the U.S. I actually got a letter back from Barack Obama. That was pretty crazy. Wow. Wrote them to homeless people. My church did this thing called blessing bags, where we would make bags of food to give away to homeless people. So I'd write a note into each bag with like a Bible quote and something like that to give to them.
Love that.
Wrote them to my wife, wrote them to obviously every client, wrote them to prospects, wrote them to astronauts, wrote them to, I don't know. And that's kind of what the purpose of the book was, so I can chronicle a lot of this stuff so I wouldn't forget it, but it's all in there. But yeah, there's a lot of different people.
I love going into like it helps expand like you said, to the frame of like who. I think some people get stuck, writer's block, for who am I going to, I have, maybe people don't even have 300 they wrote down of people they could write notes to. And then they're like, well, I'm stuck. I don't know what else to do. And, and I think an excuse can come up like, well, I could write it to an astronaut, but what if they don't write back? And all of a sudden you go, it's not the point. The point is, and what I'm getting from this conversation is you're putting gratitude out into the world, and more than even what they might receive from it is what you get from doing it. And I think that's, for me, this is, as Michael said, lots of gems in this. I'm getting lots of ahas over here, just in like, I think a lot of people are unhappy. I think a lot of people are stressed. I think a lot of people are under the gun to try to make their business work. And so then we take on things like thank you notes as a way to get, right? And in actuality, it's the opposite. It's like notes are a way to actually create the feelings we've been trying so hard to pull into our lives, but it actually happens by giving it away. That's what I'm getting over here from this conversation.
100%, 100%. And it's one of those where don't do it to get, right? But you're going to get, right? Don't do it to get. Yeah. And the thing is what's really cool about handwritten notes is that you get something by doing it not to get, right? Some things we talk about generosity and things like that, where it's like the beauty of the generosity generation is you get while giving, and then sometimes you get after giving, right? So it's like, what do you get? I mean, you get this great feeling. You get this feeling of making a difference, of making an impact, and this feeling of making others happy. And it's like anything, is that where if you want to be happy, make someone else happy, right? I mean, that's happiness. What is happiness? Making others happy. And it's like, wow, that's interesting. So it's like, but it's not being subservient. It's not being a servant. It's making them happy, making them better, you know? So it's one of those where you get while giving, you know, you actually get the giving is the getting. And then you also get. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So John, take me in. Well, I'm just curious about the Mr. Thank You project. I mean, we've said a lot of backstory and a lot of context for like now how you did all of this stuff. You had all these aha moments and realizations, and then somewhere was birthed the book and the project. And so take me into what that is and how we can actually participate in that project.
Yeah, that's great. So the project, it kind of escalated randomly, unexpectedly. And you know, there was always that hope of like, oh, maybe this will make it big sometime. I don't know. But right now I'm focusing on me. That's what I know. And so what happened was I was speaking at a conference, and an entrepreneurial conference, and they had learned I was doing this, and they said, hey, why don't you share the story of what you're doing? And I kind of shared some of the stories I'm sharing with you. And there was such a deep impact within the audience that I got a lot of handwritten cards that day, which is kind of fun side note of what you get back. But then I got a call, I got an email from Pop Sugar, which is a huge women's blog online. And they said, hey, we heard you're doing this crazy thank you note thing. We'd love to, interview you. I had no idea what it was. I was like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. I had no idea they had like 3 million followers on Facebook. So then I do an interview with them, and then that expands into, it goes onto some newsreel, and then ABC News picks it up, and then Fox News picks it up, and then somehow someone does a copycat article on Martha Stewart and Good Morning America. And it was really like, I literally was getting emails from clients being like, why the hell is my Cutco guy on Good Morning America? Like, what am I seeing online right now? And by the way, I wasn't on the show. I was on their website. They kind of, transferred the article.
Got it.
To clarify. But it really just expanded globally very quickly. And so I started getting a lot of feedback and a lot of communication. And so I was like, well, we gotta capture this. We gotta really build the community that's gonna, I want to stay connected with who cares about this, is what it came down to. And this is kind of goes along with, I'm realizing as we're talking, I had a lot of interesting experiences in college that influenced this. But one of the other side notes, and this is where the big global picture came into play, was when I was in college. I was taking a biology class, and the biology teacher was talking about, he asked a question. He said to the classroom, he said, when you look at all the bodies of water everywhere in the world, what do you think might happen if all the bodies of water increase their temperature by 1 degree Celsius or Fahrenheit? And like, we didn't know what to say. And he was like, no, not good is what it comes down to. And really what he was getting into was a conversation about global warming and how humans were affecting all this stuff. And it's kind of ruining the earth. And he was kind of bringing this whole 1% idea or 1 degree idea in a negative spin. And so I thought of that while I was doing this thank you card project. And I thought, well, what if I could have a positive effect on 1% of the world's population? Because I was starting to see how what I was doing wasn't just this thing for me, but I started getting emails from people who were like, oh, I heard about what you're doing. I started writing 1 card a day, or I wrote 50 cards last week, or I did that. And so I just found people were really connected. And I thought, well, let's find a big goal we can all be committed to. And so that's where the Mr. Thank You project came into play, which is the global movement to inspire 74 million thank you cards. And 74 million is effectively 1% of the world's population. So that's where those pieces fit together, just so you guys can see that. And so we built out MrThankYou.com, which is a platform from which we basically capture that. We keep track of that. So you can, if people here listening and you're writing a lot of cards, and you're inspired by this, you can go to mrthankyou.com and just put in your info. And we don't even have anything to sell. It's kind of crazy. People say, can I buy thank you cards from you? I'm like, no, we don't even have that yet. We're still building this thing, man. So
Wow.
that, that's kind of how it's built. And it's gotten me on, a lot of stages. I've kind of traveled the country a lot recently speaking on this. And one of the events, kind of like you said, you don't know what happens when you decide to do something like this. And I got offered to speak at TED. And so I spoke at TED in May, and man, it's just been it's like my world now is just this really abundant experience of all that gratitude. So now that that's happened, I'm kind of pulling things back a little bit. And, this month, the last few months, I've been really just kind of reanalyzing, like, what do I want to do? Where do we want to take this? And we're still, formulating that, but really we still got the same goals in place: elevating the level of gratitude on the planet, inspiring 74 million thank you cards. And, obviously we have the book now, which kind of, tells the story. So we want as many people to get a copy of that as possible. Cause really, I think when people see that, it's funny. I sat down with was on a different podcast, funny enough. And a guy heard me, found out he was in my area. He ordered a bunch of books and sat down with me, cause he's like, hey, I want to get to meet you. And as we were talking about it, he was just like, what's interesting is I was reading your cards. Cause I took pictures of a lot of my cards and I put them in the book. And he said, what I really loved about it is you're not the best writer. He was like, I see you scribble words out. I see like you don't have the best handwriting. And he's like, that actually inspired me to feel like, oh, maybe it doesn't have to have the perfect bubble letters to be great. And I was like, well, I didn't expect someone to get that out of the book, but I'm glad that worked for you. And so that's kind of the mission. That's what we're doing moving forward with Mr. Thank You.
Wow, that's so
I
cool.
love that. And I love that you covered the handwriting question, right?
Yeah,
but my handwriting's awful. Well, I will tell you that what if it was more impactful to the recipient if your handwriting wasn't great, right? If your handwriting's great, you open it up and you're like, they write all the time. It's obvious, right? It's appreciated. But you see somebody with some chicken scratch and you're like, man, it was probably painful to write this note, and you appreciate it more. And I will tell you the number one handwritten note, my favorite of all time, if you want to get handwritten notes, speak about handwritten notes, right? I mean, you'll get a lot of handwritten notes, but the number one I've ever received has a ton of spelling errors. It has E's that look like threes, and, has a awful drawing on it, but it was from my son who said, I love you, Daddy, and will forever. Right. And it's like, I mean, that's the handwritten note that I love forever. And it like misspelling, chicken scratch, awful drawings. It doesn't matter. It's the thought that truly counts. And, putting your appreciation in writing is very powerful. It's powerful for everyone. The thing that we really haven't had time to talk about is the power of positive projection, right? Mm-hmm. When you write these handwritten notes and you're appreciating and you're acknowledging others, you become better about what you're appreciating and acknowledging. John, did you notice any of this positive projection? Did you notice that you improved in some ways based on your notes to others?
Yeah, I mean, there was several things that kind of came up that I think were an expression of that. And one I talked about, which is you become a good finder. You become someone who looks for what people are doing right. Mm-hmm. And if you're in business, there are a lot of things that go wrong with vendors, with suppliers, with clients, right? And it's so easy to just write them up and say, oh, they're stupid, or oh, they're this, or oh, they're that. But what if you had to look for what was great? How might that change your perspective? Mm-hmm. And one of the sayings that I have is that, because people talk about, and Michael, I'm sure you do this with clients, is you say, well, when they set a goal, it's like, well, why is that important to you? Why is that important, right? You go through the why tunnel. And ultimately people think that what they want is going to help them feel fulfilled and happy. Sure. And so what I say is if fulfillment is the finish line, gratitude is the starting line. Mm. Meaning that if you can't appreciate what you have and where you're at, what makes you think that you're going to appreciate life when you're at your goal?
That's right.
And I think that what this is really practice for living the life that you really want.
Yeah.
And that is what I think is one of the most powerful and beautiful things that's kind of come out of this.
I think that's
powerful of you to learn this lesson so young, right? I mean, it's like, you look at the five largest regrets of the dying, right? You see some of the things that they talk about. I wish I would have taken more challenge. Wish I would have appreciated more, and all this different thing. And it's just like, it's one of those where it is this life of gratitude. They talk about going from success to significance, right? And I talk sometimes about what I call the talented person's paradox, right? The talented person's paradox is that you're going to be great at whatever you do, right? And you put your nose down and you're doing great and you're a success. And then you look around like 20 years later and you're so good at what you can do that you're doing that you can't do anything else because you would be starting over at such a late point, or you feel that way. But you realize that the ladder has been leaning against the wrong building for 20 years, right? So then you start looking for significance, right? And you start looking for this way to make a difference and so on and so forth. And it's like, what if we could just not have success and then significance? What if we could have success and significance, right? And I think that's the power of what we're talking about here is don't become a success and then look for significance. Be a success with significance, right? Have success and significance by appreciating on a daily basis and appreciating, every day. You're a good finder, right? I love that term. You're a good finder, and you're going to find more good, even in the bad. Yep. I think how were you transformed from the moment you started to the moment you finished, right? How would you describe yourself as different? What adjective would you use?
Appreciative. And I know that's almost kind of lame and trite to say, right? But I'd actually like to give your listeners is a great definition on the word appreciate that I learned in this project. And the word appreciate, the Latin root is appreciare, which literally means to appraise or to set the value of a thing. So a lot of us are in real estate. So what do you do before you sell a home? You get an appraisal. So what is that? You hire a guy or a gal to come in and they got their list of questions and they're looking at everything like what's great, what's not great, where are the cracks, where are the problems? And ultimately at the end of it, they assign a value to this thing and they say, this is worth this amount. Well, now how does that apply to a human being? How does that apply to life? And I think what it does is it just kind of brings forth this reflective state to just actually stop and consider what is great about my life? What is great about this person? That's what it really means to appreciate. It's to stop, it's to pause, to look at and to consider all the things. Because here's something to also realize, an appraiser doesn't come and tell you what the house isn't worth. They don't say, well, it's not worth it this much because of all these problems. They say, no, this is what this house is worth, including all of what's going on. And I think what's funny is that even when in considering people, when you meet someone, you find out their challenges, you find out their struggles, you learn really what they deal with just to do their everyday job. Don't you actually appreciate and value what they do more? Mm-hmm. So that was such a big lesson for me to realize that life is life all around me and I can choose to look at it whatever way I want. And if I get to as a practice, I begin to appreciate everything. And really what that means is stopping, looking and considering what is the value of this thing? What's great about this person? What's great about this experience or this circumstance? And that, man, I know that might sound simple, but dude, that is life-changing right there.
It is. That is such a great place to wrap too, because I think where you're leaving people with this sense of like valuation, like valuing out there, appreciating. And I think, this is John, this is what the Mr. Thank You Project is about. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. So if people want to connect with you, they want to, you've already said MrThankYouProject.com. Is that right?
It's MrThankYou.com is the website. So yeah, it's called the Mr. Thank You Project, but everything is under the umbrella of Mr. Thank You. So you can go to MrThankYou.com. You can also email me directly at john@MrThankYou.com.
Awesome.
And
is Mr. MR or MISTER?
Thank you for asking, by the way. It's MrThankYou.com. Nice. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Those are other good ways to connect.
So good. Thanks for sharing all your gems, like a ton of gems. Like there was maybe more gems in this episode than we've ever had, Michael. This was a super incredible episode today. If you guys listening to this want to grab the download for the Referrals Podcast, you can go to referralspodcast.com and get the 2019 yearly appreciation plan. Speaking of appreciation. And gentlemen, this was a great episode. Thank you both for your time today. And we'll see you next time.
John, thanks a million, brother. Awesome.